as outlined by the American Library Association and the American Association of School Librarians, and I quote, "The elements of collaboration, leadership, and technology are integral to every aspect of the school library media program and the school library media specialist role," end quote. No tool in the hands of a school library media specialist more clearly demonstrates the intersectionality of collaboration, leadership, and technology than Google Art Project. Google Art Project was originally launched in 2011 with the help of 17 international museums around the world. The immediate goal of the project was to produce high-resolution images and place them online. And each image would be composed of 1 gigapixel, that's 1 billion pixels. The larger goal of the Google Art Project was to give users the ability to see and experience art beyond the confines of physical boundaries and economic barriers, such as the inability to travel to these museums or afford the entrance fees. Since that time in 2011, there has been a rapid expansion of the Google Art Project. Now, there's over 151 museums in over 40 countries involved. Online, you can find over 32,000 pieces of art. The website can be translated into 18 different languages, and the website also provides street view map tours of many galleries, interiors, and hallways. As one of the largest digital repositories of art online, Google Art Project has great potential as a tool for educators. School library media specialists should be aware of this resource to enhance their collaborative efforts with teachers, parents, and students on educational projects during the school year and beyond. Today I'll provide an overview of the various basic features of Google Art Project, along with avenues for future exploration and innovative curricular endeavors. Here we see the Google Art Project's homepage, and it's usually dedicated to featured items from any collection around the world. And it's great for just spontaneous browsing when you're not looking for anything in particular. But today I want to show you a feature called Map View. That's the first one I'll be focusing on, and I think for that the best way to go about it is to go through collections. Collections takes all of the pieces of art put online and it separates them out by their physical location, so which museum holds it. You can see here how the art is organized by institution, so whether it's at the MoMA, the Hudson River Museum. And one of the best features is this little yellow man, which looks very similar to the man that you see on Google Maps. When you drag him onto the map, you can look at Street View. Well, they took that technology and they adapted it to capture the interior and exterior of museums so that people can physically walk through the museum, see where the art is placed, see the context of the art exhibit. So if you click Museum View Only, it sorts through all the 151 institutions held on Google Art Projects and pulls up only those that have been captured, both exterior, interior. It's an ongoing project, so some of the interior and exterior shots are still being captured. So if you click on the little yellow man, here's a great example of what it looks like. On the left-hand side, you can see a little dot that indicates where you're located, so kind of a virtual diagram. And then on the right-hand side, you see the actual images that they captured using Street View technology. And you can move around, and you can also switch levels. And I think one of the best examples of this is if you go down to the Adichie Museum of Art in Japan. And this just shows how extensive this map view feature can be. So they have not only the first floor, but the second, which gets into the individual display cases. And you'll see on the bottom of the screen this rolling scroll of art keeps popping up, and that's because they've linked the museum items, the individual museum item views, with where they're physically located within the museum. So if we switch to the first floor, the art will change because they're showing you the art that's actually on the walls, and you can just get rid of it, minimize it, and then you can move through the facility. MapView has a wide variety of applications. It can be used to discuss looting, cultural appropriation, to answer questions like how did Greek pieces end up the property of the London Museum. MapView can shed light on curatorial decisions, the lighting within a facility, the the background colors used on the walls to highlight art, how the space and layout functions, how art is mounted, so whether the curator decided to use ornate frames, whether the art is displayed on the floor, can patrons touch the art, even the physical location of the facility within a metropolis, suburbs, out in the country. Moving on from map view, we're now going to turn to some of the features with individual items. And for that, we're going to travel to the Skagen Museum in Denmark, one of my favorites. And so here we see at the very top with the matches, there's user galleries. These are organized by the directors of facilities, and they put in their personal notes about the art, what it evokes in them, anecdotes, information about the artist. Below that, there's a current exhibit at Skagen Museum that you can tour. And below that, there's the individual items that are shown. So as we scroll down through Skagen Museum's items, we can select one that we particularly like. Maybe Summer Evening on Skagen's Beach. And here you can see the title, the date, the little yellow man that directs you to the interior shots or exterior shots of the physical museum space, and the artist's name. And I think one of the best things about Google Art Projects is its ability to allow users to get up close and personal with the art. At a museum, you can stand there for a couple hours, however long your legs hold out, and you can put your nose up to the art as far as the guards will let you. But with Google Art Project, you can stare at a painting for hours, and you don't just have to look at it from far away, you can zoom in. So if we see here, you can click and drag. And given the high-resolution images, you can zoom in extremely close to see the individual brushstrokes that an artist uses. And this might not be the best example. It looks like the resolution is a little bit grainy. But we can flip to the next one, the lightship at Skagen Reef. And here, as we zoom in, we can clearly see those individual brushstrokes created by the artist. A teacher in this setting can talk about how a medium is applied. Is it applied to canvas, animal skin? How the medium is used. So was the oil or tempera paint kind of diluted with linseed? Was it diluted with egg whites? You talk about an artist's style. How does he apply his brushstrokes? Frantically, methodically. And so this feature, this zoom-in feature, gives educators a far bigger field to play with as far as art. Beyond zooming in and zooming out of a piece of art, another great feature of Google Art Project is the ability to compare and contrast various styles. And artists and educators do this a lot. They compare their own work to the work of Picasso, Monet, Rembrandt. And teachers do this too when they're talking about artistic styles. So when you're teaching expressionism versus realism or pointillism, you want to give visual examples to people and kind of show how they compare and contrast. And Google Art Projects does this beautifully. So for that, we'll go back to Skagen Museum and scroll through their items. And perhaps we want to compare flowers and how this artist or a few different artists painted their flowers. Well, if you go down to the left-hand corner and click compare, a little toolbar pops up. Drag first item here plus drag second item here. And I can physically drag one of his works and then scroll along until I found another flower picture and drag that in. And then you can click start comparing and it pulls them up side by side. And you can zoom in on one. So maybe I want to get in really close to one of his beautiful white flowers, and then move to the second one, his rhododendrons, and zoom in there. And here you can kind of see the similarities of colors, the splashes of yellow, the strokes of white. Compare is a great tool for teaching artist styles, teaching artistic techniques, and kind of talking about broader art movements in general and comparing them. While we're focusing in on individual item features, I'm going to talk about two other ones that I particularly like. The first is the share feature. Down in the left-hand corner, you can recommend a piece of art on your Google feed. You can Facebook it, you can tweet it out to your followers, you can email it. And I think email is particularly important because if a teacher comes to you, art teacher, science teacher, and says, I need pictures of animals painted in the 16th century. We're going to discuss them in class. Well, you can cull images from Google Art Project and then email them to them directly, and they can display them however they want. They can create a PowerPoint, they can pull them up online, or another way that you can do it is you can create galleries. And so if we go up to My Galleries, this just gives you the basic view. Right now it's blank. I don't have anything saved. But this My Galleries feature allows you to create your own personal curated collections. And like I said, if a science teacher wants paintings of animals from the 16th century, you can create a gallery for just that. And you can make it private and share it only with him or her. Or you can make it publicly accessible. So you give him the URL and he can visit it whenever he wants. And I'll just briefly demonstrate how the gallery feature works. So we'll click on an individual item. Maybe I want to save it. Just click the little plus sign and you'll see the piece of art down in your saved toolbar. Well, maybe I want another one too. Let's see. I'll save this one. Click the little plus sign in the left-hand corner. And move on. We'll get one more piece of art. Click it again, and there are your 3 pieces of saved art. You can then proceed to My Galleries, and you can create a new gallery using your saved items. You simply click, and maybe this is for comparing artist styles, and this is for Mrs. Smith, and she runs period 4. In school. And so this would be for her own personal gallery that you've compiled for her of different artistic styles, depending on what she's asked you to create. And then you can share it with her. You can keep it private and email it to her, or you can preview it. This kind of shows you what your gallery looks like. And if you're happy with it, you can make it public. And then give her the URL. So this is what it would look like. Comparing artist styles, Mrs. Smith, period. So the basic tools that I've shown you here today can have wide applications. They can be used by educators and school library media specialists however they see fit, for presentations, for student projects. But if someone's struggling with ideas about how to use Google Art Project, if they need a little inspiration, if they're looking for ways to adapt the website to their needs, one of the great educational tools that's available through Google Art Project is right down here in the right-hand corner. Just click on Cultural Institution and it brings you to a parallel website that draws off of the art on Google Art Project and gives people ideas for exhibits. It gives stories about the art. It gives lesson plans, and it just kind of foments discussion about all the ways that Google Art Project can be used by educators. So if you're scrolling down, you can see all the projects that Google has been working on. So there's mapping of the Palace of Versailles in the White House, the World Wonders Project, where if a history teacher and a K-12 school was wanting to focus on Stonehenge, Pompeii, the Great Barrier Reef, they could come here and they could see street views of these historical sites. And it also has background information, kind of little blurbs about the site and various features found on Pompeii, Great Barrier Reef. There's archive exhibits that make items that were previously inaccessible accessible. And I think probably one of the best features is right here under For Educators, Art Project. So this kind of talks about ways that you can use Google Art Projects. Look like an expert. This gives an artist or an art teacher ideas about how to talk about subject matter. So what do the flowers represent? I know in the olden days, depending on what kind of bouquet you got, the flowers were sending different messages. You know, chrysanthemum could mean passion, yellow roses were not preferred because they meant friendship, whereas you really wanted to get a red rose, which meant love. And so you can use images to discuss subject matter, time periods, traditions. And this is just one idea about how educators can use Google Art projects. If we scroll down, this is a great idea. If the shoe fits, they focused in on shoes from various time periods in paintings, and you have to match the character with the shoe: aristocrat, peasant, little girl. So it's another way to look at art. As we scroll down here, I found this one very interesting too. When you're talking about perspective and the change of landscape, how it was painted, originally artists really struggled with that ability to appropriately capture perspective, things in the foreground, the background. And so here we see another example of the change of artistic style over time. So how drapery, the production, the painting of drapery was improved over time from kind of this static clumps and folds, angular features, to kind of a more natural, nuanced approach to draping. Here, as I've talked about before, you can zoom in on images and kind of talk about how different mediums are used. Educators can talk about fresco, watercolor, tempera, oil paint, and they can really zoom in using the individual item feature. They can use the compare and contrast feature we talked about earlier to show the differences between the application of fresco, tempera, oil, watercolor. So these are just a few examples of ideas on the Cultural Institute website. And if we scroll up, there's another great resource for educators called DIY. And I think probably my favorite is the scavenger hunt. So if a teacher wants to kind of inspire their students to get interested in art and new artists that they've never seen before, he or she could create a scavenger hunt where you give them a clue and then hope they find the image, and then that leads them to another clue. And at the end, you could have an award of some sort for someone who completes the scavenger hunt. But these are just ways to get kids interested in art, interested in learning, and extend art lessons beyond the physical boundaries of the classroom. So in addition to the Cultural Institute, there's one more resource that runs parallel to the Google Art Project, and that is their Google Art Project Plus page. If you have a Gmail account, which I would recommend because that allows you to make the My Galleries that I was discussing earlier, if you have a Google account, you can follow Google Art Project Plus page. And this page is great because it's similar to a Facebook feed in that it gives you information about new events, lectures, talks, pieces of art that are now put up online. So as you can see here, one of their recent posts focuses on the new design plaza that was opened up in Korea. So it can send you emails or updates, notifications about all sorts of new things going on in the Google Art Project world. You can connect with other people, other museums to get their own news feeds, and you can also connect with communities. And I've gone on these community pages, and I was surprised there was quite a few educators on there, second grade teachers, middle school, high school, and they're either posting projects that they've discussed or were a success, or they're looking for help with new ideas for lesson plans. So Google Plus page is a great way to continue that discussion about how Google Art and just art in general can be used in the classroom. There's a photo area, and I think probably the best feature of the Google Plus page is the connection to their YouTube channel. Every so often, Google Art Project has lectures, presentations with curators or artists, and they're live streamed, so you can watch them while they're going on, or after they're completed, they're uploaded online and they're kept there indefinitely. And here you can see a talk on Frida Kahlo for International Women's Day, and even an art talk on Monuments Men, which should become quite popular in the coming months as the new movie is coming out with George Clooney. So that might entice kids to learn a little bit more about art, especially during the World War II era. So there's just a lot of great resources on this Google Plus page that educators can use. So to conclude, Google Art Projects has over 32,000 pieces of art from 151 museums around the world. As I've shown you today, you can use Google Art Project to look at the physical location of the art through Map View. You can look at individual items of art. You can zoom in or zoom out. You can share pieces of art with colleagues, students, and friends. You can compare pieces of art, artistic styles, artistic periods. You can save pieces of art, and if you have a Google account, you can create galleries, and you can share those publicly with a URL, or you can email them privately. And extending the use of Google Art projects, you can go to the Cultural Institute, and there's a variety of instructional resources, videos, lesson plan ideas, teacher guides for primary and secondary school, history topics, videos. And finally, you can use the Google Art Project Plus page to link to YouTube videos, photos, posts, and a greater community of educators and artists to extend conversations about art in the 21st century.